Welcome, fellow Toastmasters and friends. Good evening. It's December 1st, first Wednesday of the month, and we're getting ready for our next learning lab. And we have a special program for you tonight on contests. So December not only marks our start of our holiday season, it also starts very close to our contest season. And so that is why we have a special guest tonight. Before we get started, I know you're going to have a lot of comments and questions. Please feel free to put them into the chat. We'll address them after the meeting at the Q&A time. Tonight, Erik Bergman is going to be sharing with us all about being a chief judge and teaching us how to be a judge in a contest. Erik Bergman, DTM, joined Toastmasters in 2007 as a charter member of We Toasted Toastmasters in Lake Oswego. Since then, he has served in every club officer role, as well as Area 64 Director, Division E Director, and District 7 Club Growth Director. He has been honored with the District 7 Educational Service Award and Division Governor of the Year. He twice served year-long terms as District 7 Chief Judge for speech contests. He is also a member of TV Toastmasters, which produces Toastmasters-themed TV shows. Tonight, he will present on how to be a good judge for the upcoming online contest season. Please help me welcome Erik Bergman.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction, Lori. It's good to see everyone here. Before I open my PowerPoint and get into that, could people give a show of hands? Those of you who have ever judged any Toastmasters speech contest, just raise your hand or use the reaction sign to give a hand wave. We got quite a few. We got a thumbs up from Lindsay. I take it then there are a few of you who have not judged a contest. Is that true? If you have not judged the Toastmasters speech contest, give a thumbs up or a raised hand through the reaction. Okay, that's good to know. Some of you, I'm sure, will find this simply a review of things you already knew, or maybe a few things you knew but already forgot. And for those who are brand new to it, welcome. And I hope that by learning about being a judge that will enrich your Toastmasters experience and open up some new opportunities for you to serve your club or your area or higher up in the coming speech contest season. All right, it's District 7 Speech Contest Judges Training. And I'm so glad you're here tonight with me. We'll have a Q&A session after my prepared remarks. Well, Toastmasters claims that it's where leaders are made. Tonight, we're going to learn it's where judges are made also. Now, the word judge can be a loaded one. We've been told, judge not, lest ye be judged. But we're here tonight to learn about what makes a good judge. What are the ways that you can judge in a helpful way that adds value to the Toastmasters experience of everyone involved, the audience at the contest, the participants, and the fellow contest officials. Here's a look at our agenda. We got a pretty lengthy agenda here. We're going to start with the mission. What does it mean to judge? What are we trying to achieve? We'll go on to talk about values that you can apply to your judging, the traits that make a good judge, and the bias that we all have to work against, whether we see it or not. The different judging roles will be brought up too, as well as the different ballots that we'll use in the two contests. I'll share some techniques that work for me and to keep in mind as you fill out your judging scorecard. And we'll look at that most important book, the Rulebook. What is in it? Why you should read it. the mission of a Toastmasters speech contest judge is simple. Pick the winner and the runners up. No ties. You have to name 1, 2, and 3 in order of how well they did. All this done by judging all contestants fairly and consistently, so that whatever method you apply, whatever standards you apply equally to the first speaker as well as to the final speaker and everyone in between. You might recognize some of the people in these photos. They are, for the most part, real photos of District 7 Toastmasters. Really, the purpose of a speech contest is to have a fair contest and make it an enjoyable event for all parties. And for that, really, the judge has to share the values of being objective where at all possible, eliminating bias whenever that's possible, knowing and supporting the rules so that there's fairness applied. As a judge who is voting, you're going to not pay attention to timing. That's for the timers and for the contest chair if there's a speaker going too long or too short. Should a protest be made, you'll be one of the team that helps resolve that protest and votes on a final decision. And throughout this, you're going to maintain your confidentiality. To all extents practical, you will remain anonymous, and you will not discuss your ballot or your ranking of the individuals or the overall results of the contest with anyone except the chief judge. If you need to vent, vent to the chief judge, not to your best friend from another club. I carry around one of these Toastmaster coins, which are great for reminding me of the core values of Toastmasters. And right at the top, integrity is one that I think should be at the top of every judge's list. And we're applying these values to honor the people who are in that contest, the contestants, the audience, fellow judges, and the reputation of Toastmasters International. A judge's traits, here I've listed 5 of them, and I think they're really important. I make no editorial comment on whether Judge Judy would be a worthy Toastmaster contest judge. She would certainly fail in the confidential department since her decisions are on national TV and she expresses her opinion frequently and persistently about anyone's guilt or innocence. But I think if we can apply accuracy, trustworthiness, knowledge, good listening to the contest judging experience, we're going to have a group of good judges out there giving every contestant a fair shake. And for me anyway, it's a great experience to leave a contest saying, yeah, the best speaker won. That's great. We may all think that we're perfect angels who with every opinion correct, every preference well thought out, yet not really. We all contain in us some amount of bias, and our biases, our preferences can rob us of our objectivity, and the objectivity is what we really want to apply equally across all speakers. And Toastmasters has listed out some of the, like 7 of the top factors that might diminish how objective we can be. And so these are things to keep in mind, even if we can't always work to reduce them to 0 every time. If we're aware of them, we can be conscious of it. So let's start with the speaking order. Often it's thought that the first speaker or the last speaker has some kind of a built-in advantage. The first speaker is the first one. It's the kind of setting the bar for the contest. So that person might be more memorable because we haven't heard a bunch of other speeches yet. On the other hand, the final speaker may be perceived to have an advantage because they're the most recent and their speech is the freshest in the judge's mind. Somehow we have to stay on an even keel and give the same attention across the speaking lineup. And when it comes to the district and we have perhaps 9 speakers, numbers 4, 5, and 6 might kind of get lost and feel left out if we're not balancing in our own mind any prejudice we might be giving to the order of the speakers. What about the underdog? Just a few years ago, Ryan Avery entered a contest on crutches. He had injured his foot very badly and literally couldn't walk without crutches, so he had to hobble onto the stage. It made him an underdog in a way. We look at him and say, oh, I hope he's not hurting. Oh my goodness, he's doing such a brave job. Does he deserve bonus points for overcoming an obstacle? No. Do not raise his score or lower his score for the fact that he's on crutches. Judge the rest of the performance as much as you can without letting that affect you. The halo effect, well, that's when somebody is so good at one thing, say their showmanship or their stage presence, that it tends to cast a brilliant, shining halo over everything they do, even if it's not deserved. So say that somebody has great stage presence, their gestures are spot on, they use the stage, they use their voice well. Does that mean that you are going to raise their score for content, for organization? No, it shouldn't. If one aspect of their presentation is really great, leave it so they give them a high score in that area and then judge the other areas according to the criteria on the ballot. So don't let one aspect overshadow all others. On the other hand, there's a reverse halo effect, which is they do so badly at one thing that it kind of taints the whole speech for you. So if their vocabulary, for instance, is maybe they use some words wrong, maybe they stumble a bit, does that really detract from the fact that their speech is well organized with a strong message and they really deliver that? So neither something that's so great or so bad should affect overall how you judge their presentation. Well, now we come to the second time around. And for those of us who have been around a while, we've seen a lot of speakers. And we've seen a lot of speakers try and try and try at speech contests. They're well known, at least to some of the judges. So we might take it into our mind to think, this person is such a trooper. They give their all. They've put in so much work over these past years. I think this time they deserve to win. And that's before we've even heard them. So the second time around, it doesn't mean that you deserve to win more than someone else just because you've done it before and maybe not succeeded yet. You'll have to earn it, as all the other speakers will have to earn it. I imagine some of you remember a few years ago an example of the unnorm, meaning something out of the ordinary, not usual, maybe never been seen. It was Robert Brewer, and he gave a speech that was mostly delivered rhyming as rap lyrics. Now, if you're my age you might not take as kindly to rap music or rap lyrics. You might not get it as easily as a much younger Toastmaster who listens to the music and appreciates the rhyme and the pattern and the wordplay. Robert really tried something different with something we hadn't heard or seen, and it worked. So just because it wasn't normal, wasn't just the same old fellow Toastmasters speech, he was rewarded, I think, rightly for doing something different, but most importantly, doing it really well, passing all the checkpoints and doing a great job. And finally, at the bottom, we have personal bias. We all have our own preferences. We've all had personal experiences, sometimes with many other Toastmasters. We may like a fellow member, even if we're not in their same club. We might like them. Maybe they did us a good turn sometime in the past. Now, this isn't the time to reward them for that. Set aside the personal bias. Remember, it's about who gave the best presentation on that day as you experienced it. I'm sure there are some other objectivity robbers, but this is quite a list. Even if you've never been a judge before, you already have a lot of skills, I believe, that can make you a good judge. That is, if you've been giving feedback to people by evaluating their speeches in your club, or if you've been listening when other members have been evaluating your speeches. A lot of the skills about what makes a good speech, what makes a well-organized speech, what is good presentation, what is good language, all these are things that you've been practicing in Toastmasters. But there is a huge and critical difference between judging and evaluation. Judging, of course, is to select the winner. Evaluating is giving feedback. The only feedback a contestant will get is the announcement from the contest chair. Either you were first, second, or third, or you didn't make it into that group. Because judging is confidential and anonymous, judges do not discuss their scores, their ballot, their reasoning, how they agreed or disagreed with the final results. That's not for the speakers to know, and we don't talk about with them, no matter how politely they might ask or how persistently they might ask. If they want someone to evaluate their contest speech, they can have any member who is not a judge fill in the pathways eval form for them. So judging is not evaluating. And we have three kinds of judges for every contest. I'm really not going to talk much about the chief judge role. That's a specialized role. And boy, the rulebook is full of information about what the chief judge needs to do. Essentially, the chief judge is the manager and the presiding judge, like the Supreme Court, head of the Supreme Court, but is not a voting judge. They do not vote to help choose a winner. Rather, they're in charge of making sure the judging is fair, equitable, and accurately counted when the ballots are turned in. We'll focus more today on voting judge and what is actually, I think, a subgroup of voting judge, tiebreaking judge. Tiebreaking judge has a few special features and duties, but essentially very similar to the voting judge. For the voting judge to be ready for the task, I think it's really important that they read a rule book. That's where the good stuff is. It's not a page turner. You may have to put it aside, pick it up later, but at least for the type of contest that you are going to judge, read that section, get familiar with it. It'll start making more sense and it'll start getting settled in your brain if you've reviewed it a couple times, looked it over, and it's searchable. There's a PDF you can download. It's searchable by word or phrase, so you can find fairly quickly what you're looking for. There's also going to be a pre-contest briefing that's put on typically by the chief judge or perhaps the contest chair, where they will brief you on what you need to know. They'll share any instructions they might have, and you can ask questions. So that's really important. And that's done in advance of the contest, so you can get all organized and make sure you're on the same page as your rest of your team. During the contest, your job is to listen carefully and name your first, second, and third place speakers. If you see a problem with any originality of the speeches, or if you have a question about eligibility, you may lodge a protest to the chief judge or the contest chair. And again, very important, no loose lips, meaning you don't talk about your own score or anyone else's scores or the results. Tiebreaking judge has a very similar job. A little distinction though, because the tiebreaking judge is chosen in secret by the chief judge, they are not going to attend the group briefing in advance. And during the contest, they are going to rank all the speakers. If there are 9 speakers, that means they're going to rank number 1 through number 9. That ballot, of course, goes to the chief judge only, and it will be referred to in case there is a tie in the awards, in which case the tie-breaking ballot is opened, and whatever speaker ranks higher among those that are tied on that ballot will have the higher finishing position. Now, the online contests have presented some new wrinkles to the well-known and very practiced Toastmasters speech contest format. And I can't claim to be an expert in all these. I just discovered there is a PDF from Toastmasters, the best practices for online speech contests. It covers all the aspects of setting up and delivering a great speech contest. So I recommend that to you. It's kind of beyond the scope of what I can talk about though today. But for online contests in general, you're going to want to follow the guidance of your chief judge or the contest chair or the Zoom master. Some or all of these people are going to be bossing you around, telling you, go to this breakout room, come back to the main meeting, send me your ballot, all those things. So follow the lead of the people who are running the contest, and you'll do all right. And now what the general best guidelines are, if you're a judge, keep your video off and remove your profile photo. You don't want to be identified by any aspect of what you're presenting on Zoom. You're going to keep you're going to stay off camera. The chief judge will give you a judge number so you can rename yourself as judge number 1 or number 2 or whatever, but don't use your own name. You want to rename. If you can do that before you log on, that's great. So log on early and do that before the audience or contestants have been told to join. And typically in the contests online that I've been a judge on, we have sent our votes in to the chief judge using private chat. So using the chat feature, make sure you choose only the chief judge, not everyone in the breakout room or everyone in the entire meeting when you are sending the ballots. There are other ways that you can send ballots, but that's up to the contest chair or chief judge to determine. So follow their lead on that. As we enter the contest season, there are two different categories of speech contest. And so I think it's a good idea just to review what they are. We've got evaluation and we've got international speech contest happening. And in terms of the level of competition, starting at the bottom with the club and going up to district, those four levels are the levels that the evaluation contest will take place at. All 7 of these categories, culminating in World Championship of Public Speaking, apply for the international speech contest. The club contest, it's a great place for anyone new as a judge to start. You can judge at your own club, or you can judge at a neighboring club. Any member in good standing from a club in good standing can be a judge at the club area. Start there and work your way up. As you get up to the area, division, district, then you'll have to have completed level 1 and 2 in any pathway, or under the previous legacy system, 6 speeches and competent communicator to be eligible to judge. So if you have any questions about your own eligibility, check with your VP of Education or the Rulebook or one of the district officials. People are always on the lookout for judges to help at their contest. And if you're eligible, please do help them out whenever you can. Each speech contest has its own special ballot. And they differ primarily in the weight that is given to certain aspects of speaking. On the international speech ballot here, which you see, for instance, the content itself of the speech is worth half of the scoring points. And that's pretty significant. And by content, they're talking about speech development, its effectiveness, and the speech value. So it's heavily weighted toward well-organized, crisp, clear thinking in the content itself. Delivery, in contrast, is good for 30% of the points. So that is the physical, the voice, and the manner of delivery. So a person could be as outstanding in the way they delivered it and yet not measure up to somebody's speech who had a superior content to their speech. Language rounds out the 100% by being 20%. So the appropriateness of language, the correctness of the use of words, it's important, but not as important as content. If you've not been a judge before, your chief judge would provide you with the correct ballot for each contest. And they are live forms that you can fill in while you, as you type into them, or you can print them out and mark them up at home on your own. In contrast, we see the evaluation form where the greatest weight is given to the quality of your analysis. Was it clear and focused analysis of the speech that you witnessed? The specific recommendations, the clear recommendations, the positive recommendations that you might give to the speaker account for 30%, while technique and summation are 15% each. I think it's really interesting to look at this. And I see, if I could if I could draw on my own experience, I would say that recommendations is one area where most evaluation contestants could do better. Many seem reluctant to be too specific or too, what do you say? They tend to be too careful not to hurt anybody's feelings. It's not that we're trying to hurt feelings, but if they can specifically say what might be better and at the same time as giving a way to improve it, like give an example of how that could be improved, not just say your vocal variety wasn't very wide range, but show them 2 or 3 places where they could improve that and offer it as suggestion for consideration, not as you must or you did this wrong. So recommendations, I think, is one of the areas where it really pays to listen. Did that evaluator make recommendations, and how on point were they? The summation, I think, is great because that to me would mean that a person had made the evaluation into a mini speech with a clear beginning and the summation wrapping up the key points without belaboring them and delivering a final finished product that speaker, that test speaker can feel good about, can take and put to good use. That's the evaluation ballot. Share some overall best practices. And the first one should be so obvious. I probably should not even have put it there, but every speaker deserves your full attention, so give it to them. Now that we're judging from home, make sure your space at home is quiet, free of distractions, with the door closed if possible, so that you can give your full attention and listen to help that person feel heard and appreciated. Again, apply the same standard to all speakers. Some of you might have individual ways that you like to fill out your ballot, different ways of taking notes or marking how you are perceiving them as you go along. But just whatever way you use it for everyone, not just for 1 or 2. In our online universe, we now have to just kind of ignore if the video or internet connection quality isn't great. That's not the speaker's fault. If there's a glitch or an interruption, we just have to look past that and judge the speech, not the technical qualities of the internet picture that we're getting. When I go through as a judge, I take notes, as many as I can, but not so many that I'm not watching what the speaker is doing. So that because if your head is down taking notes, you're missing their gestures. You may be missing something that they're doing that's either worth noting for whether it's good or could use improvement. My favorite tip is I use a plus or minus sign in each category. When I hear a great phrase that I like, plus sign in the use of language. If their gestures are repetitive or lacking, minus in the physical area. And then you can help use those pluses or minuses as a way to end up and total your score. And if anyone has other tips for filling out the ballots or otherwise, we'd love to hear those in the Q&A time. As always, your mission, and you will accept it, is to pick the winner. I remember the first time I opened the speech contest rulebook as an area director, and I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to memorize all this. It took me like 3 separate tries to finish reading the rule book. And I've reread it a lot of times since. The key thing about the rule book is there are no unwritten rules. You might hear some myths, you might hear some stories, you might hear some opinions from people who've been in Toastmasters, some of them for 40 years. And they'll talk about rules that aren't even in there. If it's not in the book, it's not a rule, and you can ignore it. So you can download the rule book from the D7 website. All the contest materials are there for easy download. And familiarize yourself with it. Whatever your role is in a speech contest, there's something you can learn and to help share to others and spread the knowledge. There are some times when it's unfortunately necessary to disqualify a speaker, but I'll point out there are only 3 ways that anyone can be disqualified. The first is a matter of eligibility. If the contest chair determines that a contestant is ineligible due to either not being a currently paid up member, or if the club they're a member of is not currently paid up, excuse me, they can be disqualified. Excuse me. So much talking. Secondly, the judges can vote to disqualify a contestant based on originality after a protest has been lodged and then they decide upon it. We're going to talk more about originality here in a second because that's pretty detailed. And finally, as you might have seen if you've been at a contest, if there is a time violation, the timer will inform the chief judge, who will tell the contest chair that there has been a time violation. Those are the only 3 ways you can be disqualified. The originality section is a weighty piece of work, and I've heard a lot of discussion about it among Toastmasters about what it really means. Rather than paraphrase it, I've just quoted it, the rule book, exactly here. I'll read some, but not all of it. So the goal is that each Toastmaster must create their own speech, and each speech must be substantially original. 25% or less of the speech may be devoted to quoting, paraphrasing, or referencing another person's content. And if you do that, you have to identify where it came from in that speech. The part that I found surprising, and it's new in the last couple of years, I think, contestants must not reference another contestant or a speech presented by another contestant from the platform at the same contest in which they are competing. I believe this is for fairness. If contestant 1 has a well-received speech, they have a catchy line or a catchy subject, speaker number 3 can come along and add an ad-lib reference into their speech about what that first person said. I've seen it done, maybe you have. This rule is to avoid the appearance of giving speaker 3 an advantage from having heard speaker 1 and the reaction to that speech. So that's a no-no now, not to refer to another person's speech that you just heard at the speech contest. I have yet to experience a protest, and I was so glad I didn't as chief judge. It seemed like such a big thing. But the key thing about protests is they're rare, and they're only about eligibility or originality. And additionally, only a voting judge or a contestant can lodge a protest, and that has to be before the winners are announced. If an audience member has a protest, that's too bad. They are not a party withstanding in this argument. If any contestant is having their eligibility or, well, I guess, no, if any contestant is having their originality of their speech questioned, they have a chance to respond in front of the voting judges, who will then vote as to whether that person remains eligible. Or they're disqualified if a majority says they are disqualified. Again, this is rare. The key thing is there's a process that's laid out so that it could be resolved fairly. So let's recap. The mission of a judge: you're going to select the winner and the runners up. You're going to apply even-handed justice to all contestants. You're going to keep those key virtues of the Toastmasters in mind, the values: objectivity, no bias, knowledge of the rules. Leave the timing aside and know that you can resolve protests with the team of judges if that's necessary. I've got a list of some of the resources here. District 7 website has everything you need to run a contest, all the different forms, and it's there for you to find. Toastmasters has online e-learning modules on speech contests and judging, easy to watch. They'll cover much of this, and it's right there for you. Our District 7 Chief Judge this year, Raj Gopalakrishnan, is available. You can reach out to him if you have questions, and I'm glad that he's on board to be the judge in charge this year. Whew, with all that, I hope you feel better armed and better informed as to how you can be a judge, how you can serve your club, area, division, district, and make the speech contest season a bright one for District 7. I hope it adds to your range of experience. It's a great thing to do, and I'm always inspired by speech contests, by hearing good speakers get up and do their best and present to an audience where there's a lot at stake. It's all about learning and growing, and I hope this has been a learning experience for you. So go out there and be a judge.